In this lesson, we're going to learn how to create a basic light. Alright, so you can see that our level, we've been in unlit mode for quite a while now, and what this does is it just shows us what our level looks like without lights. Now if we go ahead and left click on this and switch it to lit mode, you'll see that it turns black, and the reason for that is because we don't have any lights in our scene. So we want to go ahead and add lights because in the next lesson we're going to start taking a look at materials, and having a light in the scene is going to really help see the final visual of that material. So to go about creating a light in your scene, you'll simply go over to your Modes panel underneath the Place tab, and you're going to go to the Lights category. Here you'll see that you have 4 different lights that you can choose from. You have a directional light, which is going to be like the sun. You just position it in your level, and then you'll rotate it to act as the angle of the sun. Then we have a point light, which is a very common type of light, and that is going to be a light that emits light in all directions, so it's a spherical shape. Then we have a spotlight, which will emit light in a cone shape, so it's kind of like putting a light under a lampshade. And then we have skylight, which is going to give us a very nice visual effect, as it's going to sample colors from your environment, and it's going to put that on your environment. And so what that will do is it's going to act as if it's like bounced light. And it's a very, very nice light, just to add that little extra pop. Now for this, we're just going to talk about a point light, because we'll be talking about adding these at a later time. Let's go ahead and left click and drag in a point light, and you'll see that that comes in. Now, as of right now, we don't see any change, and that's because we're still in unlit mode. So let's go ahead and left click on that and go to lit mode, and you can see that our room is now lit. Now we have some weird shadows and things like that, and it depends on where you've placed this. You may have some areas of your room that you can't see. So for example, if I pull this over here, back here toward the wall, I really can't see that. Now obviously you could reposition it, or what you could do is you could adjust the attenuation of this light. Now the attenuation is represented by this light blue sphere that you see here. And that is the area in which the light will shine. So what it's going to do is it's going to give you a 100% value of light, and then it's going to attenuate or to decrease in its intensity as it gets closer and closer to this sphere. So we can adjust that attenuation by going into our light details, and here you can see attenuation. Right now it's set to 1000. We could go ahead and bump that up to something like 1200, and if we take a look inside of our level, you can now see that we can see the back of that door. Now it all depends on what you need for your project. It may just be a very small lamp, and you won't need it to shine light quite that far. Now taking a look at our light details, we have this intensity, and the intensity at default is at 5000. But you'll notice if you hover over that, you get a little tooltip, and it lets us know that a good value for like a 100-watt bulb, if it's supposed to be that kind of light, you can drop that down to like 1700, and that will give you more of a visual and realistic effect. Now obviously you're going to have to adjust that attenuation on how far you want that to reach. Now lighting, it doesn't always have to be absolutely realistic. You want to think about lighting as an artistic form. Okay, so you're adjusting that light. You're going to even adjust the color, which you can see here, and if you left click on that swatch, you can change that. So if I want this to be more of like an incandescent bulb, which is a little more yellow, we would go ahead and change that. And then you hit OK, and now this is going to actually look a little bit more like a lamp. Now in my opinion, I think that's a little too yellow. Let me go ahead and move my color picker again. Add a little bit more orange to that, and a little bit lighter. And you're going to get something that looks kind of like that. Okay, let's go ahead and switch it back to white for right now, just to keep things very simple. Okay. Alright, so there is our light. We talked about the intensity, the color, the attenuation. You could also turn off casting shadows on lights, and that's very easy to do just by left clicking on that, and that will turn off any cast shadows that it creates from static meshes. Now it's still going to cast shadows being in specific positions. Okay, so something like this is kind of blocking off that light. There's something going on with our mesh here, but that's alright. But you'll notice that our static mesh, like this piece here, isn't really casting a shadow on any other objects. It's just dark on this side. Okay, we can turn that back on, and you'll notice those shadows being cast again. Let's see, use inverse. This gives us a very nice light fall off, and you can also start to adjust those little details there. And this is where we start getting into that artistic look for our lights. Now, we don't want to get too far into the lights themselves, getting into all of the different details, because we really just don't want to overload ourselves with that. Lights are pretty easy to place and to manipulate as far as their details go. Now, with lights, you'll also need to build your lighting. As you can see, this little warning here. Whenever you add any new lights, if you make any changes to your static meshes, you'll need to rebuild your lighting, and that can be done up here under your build. Now, whenever you build, you'll want to go ahead and left click on this little options menu, and you'll want to change things like the lighting quality. So if you're set to production, that's going to give us a very high lighting quality, and that may be a little bit too high for us. So you'll want to set this to something like preview, so that way we can work a little bit faster and we're not waiting on that compile that entire time. Alright, so that is the basics of lighting. We're going to go ahead and keep this light in here, because whenever we start to apply our materials, we need that light to be able to see things like the normal maps and the specularity. And so we're going to go ahead and get started with looking into the basics of the material editor next.